conference called by the Alliance for Change. As we head down to elections 2025, I'm pleased with the panel I have here at the head table. Of course, you know the leader of the Alliance for Change, Mr. Nigel Hughes, seated 2 chairs down to my left. And we have gracing us with their presence today, Ms. Kerry Gravesande, and former Minister under the coalition government, Jaipal Sharma. I will ask Mr. Hughes to make some opening remarks on a very important matter, after which he will do formal introductions of Kerry and Jaipal. Nigel?
Good afternoon, members of the media. Thank you very much for joining us again on this Friday afternoon. As you know, all eyes are focused on the elections, and particularly nomination day next week, Monday. And up to now, we have not heard from GCOM on the procedure for the presentation of the lists. On the 1st of July this year, we wrote to Mr. Vishnu Prasad asking him specifically about the procedure for the presentation of the list. All we know to date is that the presentation will take place at the Umanayana. We have engaged with the Guyana Police Force in an effort to make sure that at least our presentation is done as orderly as possible. We understand that GCOM is likely to be at that location for midnight on Sunday night. But as you know, there are at least 4 parties camping outside of the Umanayana. The APNU arrived first, we will follow them, and then ALP, and then Forward Guyana. And we really believe that this country has reached a stage where everyone ought to know what the specific procedures are at every given stage in the electoral process. So we shouldn't be hearing on Saturday or Friday or Sunday what the procedure is for the presentation of the list, because this is particularly important and it has consequences for the persons who are on the list. So again, we want to repeat the call we made on the 1st of July when we wrote to Mr. Vishnu Prasad to let all parties know and let the public know specifically what the procedures are for the submission of the list. On a much happier note, significantly happier note, I am very happy to introduce 2 people today who have come on board Team AFC and will be an essential and critical part of our team going forward, and of course part of the government in the event the Alliance for Change was elected. On my left is Kerry Gravesande Bart. Kerry, for most people in the business community, is absolutely no stranger. And I would like to, for those of you who are not familiar with Kerry, just share a little bit of her background. In 2018, Kerry won the inaugural Women in Business Award in Guyana. As you know, one of the major thrusts of the Alliance for Change is not only business, but women in business. And so Kerry is a perfect fit. In 2019, she went on to found the Women Chamber of Commerce and Industry in Guyana. That was groundbreaking because it was the first time we had a women's organization dedicated to business in Guyana. And Kerry will head up our thrust in making sure not only the increased opportunities for women in business, but more importantly, taking us to one of the AFC's goals, which is to establish a financial institution or a bank for women. And so over the next coming weeks, you will be hearing from Kerry. But at this point, I would like to introduce the public to Ms. Kerry Gravesande, who will make a statement. Kerry?
Thank you, Nigel. Good afternoon, everyone, fellow Guyanese, fellow AFC leadership members of the media, my family and my friends who are watching today. I'm deeply honored and humbled and inspired by the trust placed in me by the Alliance for Change and by the potential we hold together for our beloved country, Guyana. Many of you may already know me from my years of work within the private sector, but today allow me to reintroduce myself I am Karensa Gravesandi Bart, but everyone calls me Carrie. Proud Guyanese woman, mother, wife, entrepreneur, advocate for women's empowerment and youth development and good governance. My journey, like many of yours, have been defined by dreams, hard work, and persistence, and above all, my passionate love for Guyana. I've had the privilege to co-found and lead several ventures, including the establishment of Guyana's first locally owned recruitment agency, specializing in the emerging oil and gas sector, as well as the first Women's Chamber of Commerce and Industry in Guyana, and it's the first of its kind in the Caribbean as well. These experiences taught me firsthand of the transformative power of innovation, hard work, and responsible leadership. It has deepened my belief that local talent, when given opportunity, can compete globally, and we do have the potential to really compete globally, and we'd like to really tap in more into that. Today, I accept the nomination of AFC's parliamentary candidate, not merely as a political figure, but as your advocate and partner in shaping a brighter, fairer, and more prosperous future for every single Guyanese citizen. My vision is clear: a Guyana that thrives economically, stands firm on good governance, empowers its women and youth, and ensures inclusive growth. Imagine a Guyana where opportunities are abundant for our youth, where quality education, vocational training, and meaningful employment become the norm, not the exception. Imagine a country where entrepreneurship flourishes, backed by accessible financing, tax incentives, mentorship programs, and a culture of innovation and transparency. Picture a Guyana in which every woman and child is empowered and safe, not just in principle, but practically, with equitable laws, real economic support, and a true representation in every sphere of society. I pledge to serve with integrity, empathy, and utmost dedication. We must rise above the traditional divides and come together in pursuit of shared dreams. Today, I invite every single Guyanese citizen to join this movement for positive change. Let's build a country defined by unity, prosperity, justice, and hope. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kerry. We are very happy to have you join the team. I have another significant announcement to make. This gentleman is absolutely no stranger to public life and public service in Guyana. He has given 18 years of his life to public service, of which 11 years he has been a senior public servant. He's worked in the office of the Auditor General for 8 years, worked in the Public Service Ministry, Ministry of Labor and Human Services and Social Security. He was on the RDC for Region 6, worked with GCOM, has been a member of the National Assembly for 7 years, and was, of course, in the last administration, Minister within the Ministry of Finance for 4 years, and then served as Minister within the Ministry of Public Infrastructure. As you know, governance and community development, grassroots development, are particularly important to the Alliance for Change. And in our efforts to create a new and modern Guyana, we are very, very privileged to have join us and be on board with us Mr. Jaipal Sharma. Mr. Sharma has served very well, and those of you who tracked the performance of the previous administration served particularly well as a minister within the Ministry of Finance. We believe as we go forward in Guyana, we have a broad coalition of several interests which are dedicated to seeing the country advance. And I can think of no better person who can be part of that team, who has the experience of serving as a minister, who has been a public servant for 18 years, to come on board and lend to us that tremendous history of experience that he has. I would like to welcome on board Mr. Jaipal Sharma, and I invite him to make a few comments.
Thank you, Presidential Candidate and Leader of the AFC, Nigel Hughes. I am heartened that I was given this opportunity to be a candidate on the list of candidates, and I believe it will be both on the national top-up and the geographical constituency list, Region 4, and I'm so pleased to be in his leadership, because I personally believe that the best of presidential candidates, including the incumbent, the best of them is Mr. Nigel Hughes, because of the person he is, the qualities of him. So when you're going to choose a person, you're choosing a person with quality of leadership, and Mr. Nigel Hughes fits and tick all the boxes in terms of what you want to see as a leader in Guyana. Talk about being honorable, having integrity, honest, and I could even go far to say that he's a man after God's own heart. And that is the kind of endorsement any presidential candidate should be wanting from his candidates heading towards a general and regional election. You know, that date is set for 1st of September 2025, and it's a defining moment for Guyana. So we asking Guyanese in Guyana and the diaspora to vote wisely, because this election is not about Guyanese at home voting. I believe maybe about 200 to 250,000 of those electors on the official list of electors going to be from the diaspora. That is a quite large amount. It could impact heavily on the next presidency, and so you need to choose wisely. The PPP is a party that, you know, so they strive on what I refer to as theatrics. They perform well, they dress well, and the dress is going to be beautiful. You can't see a post without a PPP flag, left alone. I don't know if they had the necessary approval to do it, but nevertheless, the dress, the post. But there is rules in the game in elections. There's a time when you're given to put up such paraphernalia and the time to take them down. I don't know if GCOM themselves is looking at these things. And so these are some of the things I will be looking at. As you know, I worked at GCOM as a senior officer, and I could focus on some of the shortcomings from that constitutional body itself, if they're disseminating the correct information, giving the right guidance to political parties and candidates. Thank you, Mr. Nigel Hughes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sharma and Dr. Sharma, and welcome on board. One final issue with GCOM before we go to the question period. On the 17th of June, 2025, the Alliance for Change wrote to GCOM specifically, and I'll quote from the letter. It says, "We write to request a list of the districts and subdivisions in which GCOM has conducted prescribed investigations and canceled the registration of deceased persons from the list of eligible voters from the year 2022 to present." Of course, GCOM has failed to respond, but I mention this because this week we heard that the eligible voters, the number of eligible voters of the country exceeds 700,000 people. That is a phenomenal number for a country. Well, we don't know what the official population is, as we haven't received the census, but for a country that has no more than 780,000 or 800,000 perhaps. So again, there are difficulties in the election. Mathematically, we believe it is problematic to have in excess of 700,000 eligible voters. And since we've requested since the 17th of June to find out exactly how many people and where GCOM has actually conducted exercises to remove the deceased people from the list of registered voters, we believe yet again GCOM is demonstrating its lack of capacity to be able to hold an election which is credible. we'd like to urge them not only to respond to our letter, but also to hold frequent public information engagements in which these issues that are raised not only by the contestants, but by the press and the citizenry can be addressed. I thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Nigel Hughes. Kerry Jaipal, thank you also. Ladies and gentlemen of the media, we will now invite you to take your questions. Of course, the usual courtesy. Identify yourself and the media house you represent. I see in-house here we have Svetlana. If I can just get this microphone for her. Go ahead, Svetlana.
Hi, good afternoon. Svetlana Marshall from News Source. Mr. Hughes, during your opening statement, you spoke about not having clear directives from GCOM as a result, as it relates, to the procedure for submission of lists of candidates. What are the implications for the procedure not being, what are the implications for the parties, particularly those smaller parties, who may, and those parties who would have come out, in a sense, from the coalition, and even people who would have moved from party to party? What are the implications of that on those parties, not having a clear system in place?
Sure. Thank you, Svetlana, for your question. The short answer to that, and I'll give you the short and the long answer. The short answer to that is chaos. Because if GCOM does not establish and publish what the procedure is, then the assumption is the person that gets there first is the person who's going to be registered as the first political party and have the list of candidates. Now therein lies the problem. Because if you don't have a procedure and everybody is rushing, jumping over the fence as happened the last time, that's a recipe for chaos. And where you have a lot of party supporters who are going to be there, that's a recipe for disaster. So for example, APNU was out there early, and we followed primarily because we don't know what the procedure is, but at least we are registering and recording the chronology in which of our arrival. So at least we know that APNU was the first out there, we were the second, ALP the third. But if there's no process or procedure published by GCOM, I would say it should have been done already, but by 6 o'clock this afternoon, what you will have is, coming up Main Street, you will have the APNU supporters. Coming west along Young Street or Avenue, you'll have the PPP supporters. And the other parties are going to be coming southwest from the seawall. Now, if there's no procedure, the police apparently are setting up barricades at 6 o'clock in the evening. We've heard through the grapevine that GCOM intends to make some record at midnight. Imagine thousands of persons there in the morning, especially with the APNU and the PPP's contingent literally next to each other in Young Street and Main Street. And if there's no procedure, you're going to have a mad rush towards the Umanayana. Now, the police have barricades, but if you don't have the procedure and those barricades are breached, it's chaos. So I think GCOM owes this country, particularly the competitors in this election, the responsibility today to specifically publish what the procedure is. As you know, the People's Progressive Party turned up and said that they were there second, took a photograph outside of the Umanayana. They did not have APNU, did not have anybody else. And so we already have the ingredients for problems. And the last thing this country needs is anything looking like a problem related to elections.
During a meeting with GCOM, when all of the parties went discussing their single ahead of our deadline, was anything said?
Miss Alert was there, so I'd ask her to answer that. I didn't attend that meeting.
Shorter answer, Svetlana, no. Nothing was set on process and procedure for nomination. We have
Hi, Jarrell Bryan, NCN News. I have 3 questions. We're days away from nomination day. Does AFC have all its candidate lists, its backers and so on, everything, all its ducks in a row? And can we expect surprises from AFC on nomination day? My second question, headed into the election, what is the AFC's assessment of its main competitors like APNU? They recently had their campaign launch and so on. Well, they haven't had a formal campaign launch as yet. What is the AFC's assessment of them? And my third question, there have been the resignations and so on from the AFC. You have 3 MPs, they left. Region 3 chairman, Region 3 councillor, and all of those persons have gone over to APNU. So does the AFC see these losses affecting its electoral prospects?
Sure. I'll answer them in the process, in the order in which you asked them. First of all, yes, we are ready. We have our list. We're ready to proceed. And we will be there but we're there right now. We've been there for 2 days, and we're going to be there all the way up to Monday morning. So the short answer to that is yes. In terms of surprises, we've just introduced 2 of the persons who you were previously unaware of, so they're here. Your second question was competition. You know, I don't think it's helpful to comment on competition. You know, we say let's all put forward our best policies and framework. We hope that there'll be debates between presidential candidates, there'll be debates between candidates, so that we provide to the public, which is really what we should be doing. We provide to the public as much information on the approaches of the different political parties. We know what the position of the PPP is because we have a list of their failures. We know what I believe APNU has, and we certainly know what we have. But at the end of the day, we need to be able to afford the population an opportunity to interrogate the plans and the proceeds. And one of the processes, and one of those ways of doing that is public debates, engagement with the public, town hall meetings, the press having, whether you have a panel of press persons asking individual candidates or asking a cast of candidates what your plans are. So for example, today we've introduced Ms. Grace-Andy Bart, and as you know, from the time I was privileged enough to be appointed as leader, I said that there was an emphasis on women in business, and we wanting to set up a development bank for women. So I think that's where we are in that. Now, in relation to the persons who have left, like I think I've said this before, forgive me if I'm repeating myself, I think anybody who leaves any institution, especially when they are at the level of member of parliament or whether they are representing the party at a council, their departure has an impact. And this is just part of the political process. So we are not going to pretend that it does not have an impact, but we're very happy because we're demonstrating today the level of talent that has come aboard and is willing to serve in a prominent role in the Alliance for Change. And this is what's important to us. We will always continue to replenish and bring fresh talent, brighter ideas forward. And we are particularly privileged and honored to start with these two persons here. I hope that has addressed your 3 questions.
Yeah, another question. Most likely you're going to be the presidential candidate, but have you identified your running mates yet?
All of that is going to be announced after nomination day. All of that. We're not hiding information. What we're trying to do is make sure that we get the electoral process done properly. And right now, we really need to we need to understand what is the process for submitting the list. The last thing you want is a competition between 100-meter sprinters. Just to give you an example, the APNU and the PPP are closest to the Umanayana, where they've assigned them to approach Umanayana. APNU is in High Street, so there's only one building between them and the entrance to the Umanayana. I think it's less than 25 yards. PPP is in Young Street, again, literally just across the entrance. They put all the other parties on the Seawall Road. So if they said, okay, clock started, we have a longer distance to run to get to the Humaniana, if that is the procedure, than the PPP and the APNU. That's why it is of vital importance that the GCOM this afternoon says specifically what is the procedure for the submission of the list. You have 4 parties camping out there, and up to now we don't know what the procedure is.
Thank you, Mr. Hughes. Online, do we have any questions from the media?
Chronicle.
Chronicle? Who is there for Chronicle?
Yes, good afternoon. Tamar Musa here for the Guyana Chronicle. My first question, we've seen comments from observers stating that the real reason behind your party camping outside of the Humaniana despite GCOM's absence is because you're trying to get ahead of the likelihood that there may be duplication of some of the signatures of backers between your party and other opposition parties. Do you care to address this?
Sure, we're out there because we don't know what the procedure is. And as you know, the last time there was an election, there were several political parties out there. I don't know if you're suggesting that they had duplication issues. I'm not sure why you specifically would assume the Alliance for Change has that issue, particularly when in 2006 and 2011 we competed, and as we are competing now on our own. So I'm not sure what specific information you have that you wish to share that somehow suggests that we are concerned about duplication when we had adopted this procedure before.
Any other questions, Chronicle? I still see your hand up.
All right, yes. Just one more question from me. So there was no compromise in relation to coalition talks between the AFC and the APNU/PNC. But there were reports of secret attempts to poach AFC members. Is the AFC concerned that this might have been a deliberate attempt from the start to weaken the party?
You know, all is fair in love and war, and politics is war. So we've lost members. We're gaining some real talent here. So I don't want to speculate as to what our competitors intended to do. The point is we are resilient, and we will withstand any attack. So whether it's poaching members or anything else, we are prepared for that. I can't speculate as to what the intentions of our competitors may be.
Any other questions online? Okay, Svetlana, that's an indication of a question. Please go ahead.
Yes. Mr. Hughes, are you concerned about the falsification of signatures with regards to those backers? I think during the local government elections, we've had at least 1 or 2 cases where the names of dead persons would have appeared on the list for the backers. Could you address that? I was going to ask about your prime ministerial candidate as well, because, you know, the public wants to know who is going to be running alongside you, and when would the party be launching its election campaign?
Okay, so let me deal with the deceased people being on the list. As I mentioned earlier, since June the 17th, we wrote about dead people being expunged from the list. GCOM was supposed to have conducted a series of exercises specifically for this purpose. Up to this morning, I received a call from a Guyanese living in New York that in Baracara and the surrounding areas in the Berbice River, there were several people who have been long dead since 2013 and 2015 who were still on the list that was just released by GCOM. I would have thought by now, after 10 years, if a person died in 2013, by now GCOM would have had their names removed. And this is one of the Guyanese who came from that area. And he, just off of his knowledge of the persons who lived in that area, like the Curie and several tributaries to the Kanji River, said that these people have been dead for a substantial period of time. Secondly, I'm sorry I don't have the note here. He actually mentioned the village that does not exist, no longer exists, that is on GCOM's list with residents. So there are issues. So when you ask about deceased persons being nominated for candidates, I'm sure it's very possible. But again, it is the lack of confidence that one has or doesn't have, as the case may be, in GCOM that is going to lead to, you know, every cut. It's almost like death by 1,000 cuts. And GCOM consistently keeps providing us with opportunities for us not to have confidence in their abilities. We shared that with the Carter Center yesterday when we met with them.
Thank you, Nigel.
The launch of the campaign.
Oh, the launch of the campaign is going to be next week. We want to get past nomination day, and it's going to be during the course of next week. And, and in relation to the prime ministerial candidate, again, the AFC is not about individuals; it's about a team. So we're going to be releasing a team of persons who represent, I believe, the best interests of Guyana.
Any other questions from the media?
I know at the meeting with GCOM, when I spoke with Mrs. Alert, the issue of the join the list was a big thing, and that was addressed, I think, yesterday. Is the party at this stage in discussion with any other party to form a join the list?
We have been in discussions with like-minded parties to look at that. GCOM has provided us with their interpretation of the law. Whether that interpretation be consistent with a ruling from the court is another matter, but we certainly are in active discussions with other parties to explore the join the list.
Would you go so far as to say, give us the names of those parties?
I wouldn't want to give you the names of all, but we certainly have been in active discussion with the ALP for sure.
And how have those discussions been going?
Positively. Positively. I saw you look at Ms. Barker. You're going to ask her a question.
I know your background is business, and you spoke during your opening statement a bit on that. But what are some of the issues affecting industries in Guyana that you would want to see addressed head-on? Should you take Parliament or the government or the AFC take office come September 1?
Well, number one on the list would be access to financing for women. Our leaders spoke about establishing a financial institution for women. I think that has long been needed, so that's something that we will work aggressively to accomplish. The next thing, second on the list, and I've been talking about this in my groups for quite a while, is access to regional and international markets for especially women entrepreneurs within our 10 regions. How do they get the network to expand to global markets? It might be how they package and financing to extend to those markets as well. So those would be two things immediately.
And Mr. Sharma, you were part of the APNU/AFC, and you had formed part of the APNU, part of that coalition. Could you explain your reason for realigning yourself with the AFC in particular?
I think I mentioned that it's because of Mr. Nigel Hughes himself. If AFC had any other presidential candidate, I would not be with that party. So it's because of him I'm here.
So you're confident in policies being led by the team?
Yes, but not just the policy, the individual. So should take the presidency after the results is declared. I have all trust that he would make the most excellent president Guyana ever would have had.
Ladies and gentlemen of the media, any other questions? Online? I see no hands raised. If there's somebody trying to get in, you can pose your question now, if you can get your hand raised. And in-house, any other?
Just to ensure that there are no other issues with regards to the electoral processes with respect to
Just to ensure that there are no other issues, you mentioned the cleansing of the list, and you mentioned the procedure for the submission of lists of candidates. Are there other issues that the party would wish to elaborate on concerning the entire election process?
Yeah, we've been raising these issues continuously. The immediate one, of course, is the submission of the list. As you know, a week or so ago, GCOM took an approach where they were only going to give the parliamentary parties hard copies, which displays, this is not, I just want to make this clear for our membership, for the citizens. The issue is not whether or not we can print the lists. This is an issue of fairness in the conduct of the election. So you can't, if you have 19 parties competing, select 2 of the 19 for special treatment and leave the other 17 behind. So it's not a question of cost, it's a question of the approach of GCOM to the conduct of the election. And if that is their approach going forward, it doesn't augur well. As you know, the Alliance for Change and none of the other parties outside the PPP and the PNC, PNC-WPA, have any representative on GCOM. That means the concerns of those parties that don't have a representative on GCOM will not be brought to the attention of GCOM through the Commission. And the experience we have had in our engagements with GCOM are very, very discouraging. So the process itself structurally has issues, really has issues. So if any one of the parties has a particular issue about what happens in a particular location, that will never make it to the Commission. And if the Commission can't respond to letters that we've sent to them since the 17th of June about the removal of dead people from the list, then they're not even being responsive to ourselves. So you have real issues there about how the elections are managed and how the process is structured. But there are several other issues. The first issue is, how can you have a list of 700,000 plus eligible voters in Guyana? How is that possible? It means our population must be somewhere close to 1 million people, if not more. And how do you, in all seriousness, say that this is the list, this is the number of persons who are eligible to vote, and you don't have a census? So what happens when the census comes out and says actually the population is 680,000 or 700,000, and that number would include people who are not eligible to vote, the people who are under 18. So we have some real issues here, and GCOM seems to be media shy. They're not coming forward to address these issues. Maybe you should turn the...
Yeah, I had a question. It's been an issue in the public domain for some time, and you've been fairly quiet. You know, you haven't really defended yourself or anything, but there have been accusations of unauthorized use of campaign material and so on. So,
unauthorized use of campaign material?
Yes, a consultant had put that out in the public domain, and then it's been raised by your political opponents on several occasions. So
you're talking about Ms. Sinclair?
Yeah.
Ms. Sinclair, you see, she selected Rickford Burke, she selected Melly Mel, and she has been going after all the persons she thinks is doing damage to the People's Progressive Party. I'm sure you saw Mr. Burke's release over the last 2 days in relation to Ms. Sinclair and what she has been doing. So I've addressed this, and I am more than willing to address this. There's absolutely nothing Ms. Sinclair has contributed, and I invited her from the start when she made these allegations. Please go take us to court. If you believe you have intellectual property that needs protecting, go take us to court. She doesn't even have a presence here or in the United States. She has nothing registered. So I don't want to litigate this in the press. Let her, I've invited her, please go to court and assert your claim. That's how we settle disputes.
Thank you.
Ms. Hughes, could you say, I know, yes, the list is a concern, and the parties would have agents on the ground on E-Day. Could you say if the party has been able to cover all of the polling stations, or would you be able to do so? And if not, are you satisfied that there's going to be a high number of international, regional, and even local observer missions in Guyana observing the elections? Are you comforted by that? And I know that you said that you met with the Carter Center. You mentioned one of the issues raised. Would you be able to brief us on the other issues and, you know, what the discussion was? And that's all for me.
No, you don't have to limit yourself. There are going to be over 3,000 polling places. Other than having the resources of the state available, there is, I think, outside of the party that is in government, it's going to be virtually impossible for the Alliance for Change to have polling agents in all 3,000 stations. If we had a country that was committed as a country to true democracy and accurate reflection of the votes of the people, they would fund the presence of polling agents from all the parties in all the polling stations so that we could be confident. As you know, observer missions come with no more than 20 people. So it's going to be virtually impossible for them to cover, not even regionally, a sample of the areas. So most of them tend to focus on Region 4 in Georgetown. But what happens, are they going to be embedded in Chinapau? Are they going to be embedded in Chinaweng in the upper Mazaruni? Are they going to be embedded in Apateri? Because these are all areas where Venezuelans have made their way onto the list. And so it's not Region 4 only. It's all those areas where we have seen a surge in the number of registrants who are particularly Venezuelan or of Venezuelan origin. Those are the areas that you want. Because remember, if you steal 2 votes per polling booth, you're already at 2 seats. You have successfully stolen 2 seats. And so 3,000 boxes, 2 votes per box, you got yourself a seat for sure. So you don't have to have large scale theft. And in the areas where you know that the observers are not likely to attend, because observers have restrictions. Observers can only go to areas that their embassies say are safe. So the observers may not want to go to Kaku. The observers may not want to go to the Marudi Mountains, because if there's a crisis, they can't take them out. So if you steal 5 votes in the Marudi Mountains, 5 votes in Aishalton, 5 votes in Warrenau, you already very easily, and that's just the Deep South. You steal 5 votes at guns, or you could steal a whole village of guns. You already have difficulties with the process. So people keep thinking that the manipulation of elections is some sort of massive fraud. It is exceedingly easy to do where the eyes are not there. 3 votes per polling box and you are smiling away. And as you know, in the last election, the difference was 1 seat. If you steal 2 votes per polling box, you already got a seat. Piece of cake. So that's why these elections are particularly problematic. And the presence of overseas observers, especially when they're going to be concentrated in Region 4, you don't hear of them going to, I don't hear of observers going to Parika. Parika's in the coast. And you don't hear them going down Hubu back down. I don't know if they make it to Maibikuri. So you understand, If you do that out away from the eyes of the observers are going to say, we observed the process in Region 4, which is the capital, which has the largest concentration of votes, and we saw no irregularities. But if you teeth in the elections in every other region where they're not, piece of cake, because by the time those votes are counted at 2 votes per polling station, you're already 2 seats ahead. And that's the concern we have. If we are as wealthy as we are, we should say, look, political parties, the state will fund your polling agents in all of these areas, because at the end of the day, you want a result that is credible, that the victor can feel comfortable with, and the loser is prepared to concede. We have not had a concession in an election in this country, as far as I know, since independence. Maybe 1966, we had a concession. But since then, every single election in this country has not had a concession. And every one of them since 1992, the person who did not prevail has said that there have been irregularities in the system. And it's not limited to the PNC. The PPP at the 2015 election said it was rigged. So every single election, bar 1964, in this country, there has been no concession. That is a hell of a damnation on a country that is almost 60 years old. We've got to reach the stage where people concede. We've got to be able to move forward.
Thank you, Nigel. And just for clarity, ladies and gentlemen, media members of the public, when Mr. Nigel speaks of guns, he is addressing and speaking, in fact, of a village down at our southern border.
2 N's, G-U-N-N-S.
Yes. Thank you.
Where the YY live.
Any other questions? Online? Oh, the Carter Center, sorry.
Yeah, forgive me. In relation to the Carter Center, we had very long, wide-ranging discussions in which we shared with them all the concerns that we have made public to the press. So we literally said to them, the list, the approach of GCOM in terms of selecting the parties, the parliamentary parties, to the disadvantage of everybody else, that it wasn't a matter of cost, it was a matter of approach and principle. We have issues, biometrics, we raised with them that biometrics, we have been speaking to GCOM for over 9 months, and we actually presented them with information for companies that could have had biometrics established in less than 3 months. So we've spoken to them, for example, the party agents in the polling stations are given a black and white folio with a photo, which includes a black and white image of the identification card of the voter. Now, you know that our ID cards are difficult at best when they're in color. So how is anybody going to be able to look at a black and white photograph of an ID card of a person who comes forward and says they are the person on the list? So somebody, Svetlana, like you, who is equally beautiful, comes up, presents a card that has your name. There is no way any of the party agents looking at that black and white copy can say, no, this is or is not her. And as you also know, the way it happens in the polling station is the person comes, they hand over their identification card, and then the PO just holds it up at a distance of 20 feet and says, oh, this is Svetlana Marshall. So you have your agents 20 feet away looking at an ID card. They can't even see the number on the card. And then if they attempt to look at the photocopy that is given to them, all they can check is the number. But they can't see that number on the card. So this system is prone to difficulties, which means we are almost setting ourselves up for challenges ahead.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen of the media, and those of you
Sorry. Please forgive me. I just want to make one final comment. Today we lost one of the most outstanding citizens this country has and has had for 90 years. We lost Lila Kissoon. Auntie Lila, as she was to me and many persons, was a truly outstanding citizen. I would say masterclass. I think most of the young people probably only know of Kissoon's in terms of the furniture factory. But Lila Kissoon was perhaps one of the most influential women, particularly in business, since the 60s, and has consistently been at the helm, until recently, of very successful businesses. And just as a matter of history, for those who are interested, Main Street used to be the street in which the governor and people of the governor's ilk lived and were allowed to live. So if you weren't in that class, you couldn't actually own property in Main Street or live in Main Street. Lila Kissoon, with her business acumen and tremendous success at business, was able to own several properties on Main Street at a time when that was unprecedented. And just again, for a bit of history, Tacuba Lodge, where the Ministry of Foreign Affairs is located, was built, constructed in the 60s, I think late 60s or early 70s, by Lila Kissoon before the government took it over. So if every time you look at Tacuba Lodge and you think it's a modern edifice, understand that Lila Kissoon had the brilliant foresight, way ahead of her time, and we want to say to her family our most profound sympathies. And on behalf of Guyana in this difficult time, we just want to say to you, thank you for sharing Lila Kissoon with this country. Thank you.
Thank you, Nigel, ladies and gentlemen of the media. Thank you, and please be safe out there. To Kerry and Jaipal, welcome, and really glad to have you here. And of course, I hope you'll be doing many more of these sit down with us in the media. Thank you.